Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us at the fire. This is Jill.
And my name is Ben.
And we are all geared up and ready to bring you 4 awesomely, fantastically, horrifying, true stories tonight.
4 stories. Yes, we've scoured the internet mostly.
Mostly you. Mostly Ben.
A couple of these stories we found submitted on Reddit. Allegedly true accounts. I trust these people that the accounts are very detailed. They're very good.
Well, and actually, I think we found a few articles and even a documentary about one of the Reddit posts that backs the story to a T.
Yeah, all of these stories tonight really sort of center around dying or near-death experiences. I guess all sorts of supernatural stories kind of revolve around death anyway.
Well, it's the ultimate fear, right?
Yeah, what's scarier than dying? Anyway, this first story is brought to us by a Redditor user, Penguin Lovin' Man, allegedly.
Shout out to Penguin Lovin' Man.
We love your story.
And your Reddit username.
Yeah, very creative. We'll post a link to the entire story on the site. Go check it out. Give them an upvote. Good shit. Let's check it out. I used to work as a 911 operator in a relatively large metro area. One night at about 3 a.m. or so, I answered a call from an elderly old woman who said she didn't feel well. I tried to get more information about what was wrong: chest pain, trouble breathing, headache. She gave me her address and said no one else was home, but the front door was unlocked and the EMTs could come inside. I toned the call out as general illness and kept trying to get more details from her. No matter what else I asked about what was wrong, all she would say is, "I just don't feel good. Can you send someone to help me?" A few minutes later, she said, "I'm going to put the phone down for a minute. I need to go to the bathroom." I told her she can do whatever she needs to get ready, but I'd like to be able to stay in contact in case there's a problem. She said, "I'm going to put the phone down. I'll just be a minute." And that was it. I stayed on the line and asked for her every so often, but never got a reply. A couple more minutes passed, then the fire department called on scene, so I just disconnected and didn't think much about it. I told them the caller advised that the front door is unlocked and that she was in the bathroom. One of the firefighters called over the air after a few minutes. With a weird tone, he goes,
"Dispatch, how exactly was this call received?"
I told him the call was first party from the patient's home phone approximately 8 minutes ago. He didn't respond over the air, but called the desk from his cell phone, which usually only happens when something is going on that they don't want broadcasted over the radio, since anyone could listen in. On the phone, he said,
"Are you sure this wasn't a third-party call from a family member or something?"
I said, "Negative." Caller advised I don't feel good and said no one else was home. To the best of my knowledge, the caller is the patient. Have you made contact? He said,
"Yeah, she was in the bathroom like you said, but she's probably been dead about 12 hours. Cold to the touch, fully livid, full rigor. We're gonna need a deputy out here."
Afterwards, we pulled the tapes of the radio and phone calls and checked the timestamps, the address, phone number, and went over everything a few times to see if I had missed something. I called them back in the morning after the shift to see if they had any more information. But they were just as weirded out as we were. The phone was still in the living room, and the patient was dead in the bathroom.
So we got a phone call from a dead woman.
Of course, some astute Redditors have some theories about this one.
Do tell.
The most obvious explanation is It was a neighbor or a family member. Somebody came into the home, saw the body, didn't want to get involved, and called 911. Maybe somebody broke in. I don't know. She was only dead 12 hours. Maybe somebody came to check on her.
And was just like,
I don't want to deal with this, but I'm calling 911. I don't feel good, and I went into the bathroom. See you later.
I mean, on one hand, I don't blame them, but on the other hand, that's kind of messed up.
It's totally messed up. Not that intelligent. She'd obviously been dead a while.
I don't know. The ghost lover in me wants to say it was a spirit communicating from the great beyond. I'm willing to bet that this probably isn't the only story you found online involving the police.
You're right. I think all of the other ones involve the police also. Another common theme throughout the stories tonight.
So I know that you were telling me about a story that not only involves the police, but it also involves some type of magic?
Kind of, sort of, yeah. This story was inspired by an LA Times article about a crime so unusual and horrifying at the time that it was borderline impossible to believe.
Detectives of the San Francisco Police Department were responding to reports of a dead body found inside Golden Gate Park. It was obvious by the gruesome crime scene that a murder had taken place. As the officers began searching the area for any other evidence, it quickly became apparent that they'd set foot far outside of the ordinary. The body appeared to be that of a homeless man. He was an older, black male, and his head had been removed. Nearby, officers found the body of a dead chicken, and it, too, had been beheaded. Blood from the animal had been spilled onto the grass around the body, but most of it had fallen onto the body itself. Detectives searched the entire park, but were unable to recover the severed head. Puzzled by the bizarre crime, the case was explained to an experienced officer that hadn't been at the scene, but had encountered their share of unusual ritualistic crimes. Immediately, she was reminded of Santeria, a religion involving animal sacrifice brought to the Caribbean from Africa. Her colleagues laughed at the idea, and the homicide investigators pretty much told her, "Give me a break, this stuff doesn't happen." But wanting to prove her point, she went out on a limb and crafted a series of events explaining what had occurred. She explained to the detectives that they weren't able to locate the dead man's missing head because it wasn't at the park. The perpetrator had taken it with them in order to follow through with the ritual. In the 21 days following the killing, the eyes, the ears, and the brain would be added to a ritual brew blended inside of a cauldron. After these 21 days, if the priest deemed it appropriate, he would sleep in the area near the severed head in the cauldron for the next 21 days. After then, on the 42nd day, he'll discard the head right where it was taken from, doing so as a sacred way of returning it. And that's exactly what happened. The head was returned on the 42nd day after the murder, not far from where the body was discovered. But, unfortunately, since none of the detectives took the theory seriously, no one from the police department was around to see, let alone arrest whoever returned it. As for the detective who crafted the theory, her name's Sandy Gallant, and by that time, she'd even talked herself out of that theory, finding it difficult to believe that something like this could actually happen. She now takes her theories much more seriously, and she's consulted with law enforcement officials across the country on other terrifying and unusual crimes.
So that's concrete proof right there. Weird-ass ritual murders occur.
Oh, daily.
Whether you want to believe it or not. They're not all committed by Satanists and, devil worshippers. Some of them are.
But they can also be committed by your neighbors.
Or people practicing Santeria. Whatever they're trying to do, whatever the purpose of that ritual is, it's got to be something serious. I'm sure they're doing it for some positive benefit of someone, hopefully. Or maybe they're putting a sick-ass curse on somebody.
I want to know what they are brewing in those cauldrons, but I don't want to know.
Yeah, what are they adding the fucking parts of the head to?
Oh,
So like
I
a
don't.
broth?
Okay, let's not go too far into it. But yeah, that's something to be on the lookout for because I mean that's like I don't know. I wouldn't want to be put in one of those situations.
Definitely not.
I
No.
mean, I think that statement's pretty obvious, but
I think yes. Thank you.
this makes me
Thank you for
uncomfortable.
sharing the opinion. Yeah, it would be horrifying to be involved in that in any way, shape, or form. What was that movie we just watched? Where that kid stumbled upon the...
The Babysitter. It's on
It's
Netflix.
called The
It's
Babysitter?
called The Babysitter. It's on
How
Netflix.
creative.
It's like I think it's a cute little play on the slasher movie. I like it.
Yeah,
It's
I
cute.
think if you don't have anything to do for the next 90 minutes, it's probably a perfect plane movie.
Or-
if nobody can see your screen.
if you're doing dishes or cleaning around the
Yeah, if
house,
you're
you don't
doing
really need to pay
dishes for 90
attention.
minutes. It's a very visual film. I wouldn't put it on in the background.
So ritualistic killings have definitely made it to the top of my ultimate scare list, but something that has been ranked up there pretty high for a while now is just not knowing what's behind the thing that goes bump in the night. I can't tell you how many times I'm laying in bed and my door opens on its own and I am just praying it is the cat. So this is a true and terrifying tale about things that go bump in the night. One evening, the phone in the Andrews family home rang and 15-year-old Annie answered. It was a boy from her rival high school on the other line. Annie and this boy chat for a few hours and strike a conversation up over the phone the following evening. The boy, Danny, worked up the courage to finally ask Annie if she wanted to go grab some ice cream, and Annie agreed, and the two went on their very first date. But unfortunately, Annie didn't really feel a spark when they met up in person, so the teen dismissed herself early and went home. Annie's younger sister Jessica was home alone, waiting. Their father was working a night shift, and bored, the two girls thought about what to do to pass the time. The sisters decided to hold a seance to connect with their mother, who had died a few years earlier. With the Ouija board set up and the candles lit, the girls huddled together to make contact with their deceased mom. After calling her name a few times, the girls heard tap, tap, tap on the wall. They screamed and ran out of the room. They were positive they had just let their mother in. Over the next few weeks, whenever the girls' father would be working late into the night, Annie and Jessica would hear the consistent tapping in the walls. Maybe this wasn't their mother after all, but it would come from everywhere. One night, the banging was so loud in the pipes in the basement, Annie grabs a knife and the girls go downstairs to find out who or what has been terrorizing them. Once downstairs, Annie flipped the lights on and she found a message written in blood on the wall. "I'm hiding in your room. Come find me." The girls scream and run upstairs, and then they called the police. Upon further investigation from the cops, the blood used in the message was really just ketchup, and the girls were blamed for crying wolf. Of course the girls did this as an attention-seeking stunt. Their father, the sole parent, is working all of the time, right? But the girls kept insisting that they didn't do this. It was no use. They finally just caved in and said they would act better from now on, and the activity in the house stopped. Until the girls were home alone as their father was working a late night shift. Annie and Jessica, sitting in the living room watching TV, hear a familiar tapping come from upstairs. Annie grabs a knife again, and the girls reluctantly head up to their bedroom, but on their way, they discover a new bloody message on the hallway wall. "I'm back. Find me if you can. The girls run out of the house to their neighbors and call their father, Brian. When Brian comes home, he races into the house and finds the message on the wall. He runs upstairs to scold his girls for playing another prank, but when he reaches their bedroom, he finds a new message on his daughter's wall. Marry me? Beside the message, he saw a figure, draped in his late wife's wedding dress, covered in war paint and wielding a hatchet. Brian runs out of the home as quickly as he could and called the police. Once the boys in blue arrive, they search the house from top to bottom, and this time, they discover a small door peeking out from behind the dresser. Inside the door, the police find Danny, the boy who was rejected a few months earlier by Annie. Danny had been sneaking into the home's crawl space, and he'd steal food, spy on the family, making their lives into his own personal entertainment. So Danny was sent to jail, but he made bail that October, and after Danny was released, he found a new family to torment. Only this time, he targeted a pregnant mother of 2. Danny murdered Priscilla and her 2 young children, and he was caught, and he'll spend the rest of his life behind bars. But it kind of makes you think twice about what's actually causing that bump in the night.
Another situation that is truly scary as shit. Somebody sneaking into your home and like waiting for you, watching you.
Well, I don't know what kind of shits you're taking to make them that scary. But yeah, not even just like watching and waiting for you, but like sneaking out and like, what is he doing in the night when everybody's asleep?
Well,
is he just roaming about?
Yeah, what is he thinking? I'm thinking when the father comes into the bedroom and he comes out with the wedding dress on and he's painted his face with probably makeup or something he's discovered. I don't know, man. That's odd. He was asking to be caught. He probably hated that shit, living in the house, but he could have snuck back out.
I don't think he hated it. I think he loved it.
He probably loved it. The
He
kid was
totally
obviously a
loved it.
psychopath.
Yeah, I mean, who puts on a wedding dress and wields a hat? Who murders a pregnant mother and her 2 young children?
Yeah. Well, how old was he? He was 18 at the time or something?
I don't know. We'll post a link to the article that we captured this from.
Yeah. Either way, super young and spending the rest of his life in jail.
Well, he deserves
Rightfully
it.
so, yeah. I'm not trying to vouch for him or anything. Piece of shit. It's one thing to get victimized within your own home. It's a whole different story when you're somewhere unfamiliar, especially when you're on someone else's turf. This happened about 6 years ago. I was about 12 years old at the time, and my brother was 26. He had been serving in the U.S. Army for several years when this happened, and he was being deployed to the Middle East for the second time. He's a Green Beret and had recently, about 3 or 4 months earlier, completed the Army Special Forces qualification course, Robin Sage and all that, and now was an active duty SF engineer sergeant. Definitely not someone you'd want to mess around with. We both grew up sharing a passion for the outdoors, and he wanted to take me on a backpacking trip in northern Alabama before he left for the next 9 months. The Sipsey Wilderness, for those of you familiar with the area. He thought it would be nice. The trip had gone smoothly up until the 3rd night we were camping out. Around 8 in the evening, we had our camp set up, had eaten dinner, and were sitting at the fire talking about the usual, guns, girls, and all that. Where we had set up was about 50 yards from a large stream and about 50 yards downhill adjacent to the large path. This was summertime in Alabama, so it wasn't quite dark yet when 2 guys, who looked to be in their late 20s, wandered up and asked if we had seen any hogs while we were hiking around. Given that this was rural Alabama, actually we had seen some further into the wilderness area, and we told them that. Even though they were relatively polite, my brother called them good old boys, I got a seriously creepy vibe from them. Their dirty clothes, greasy hair, really scraggly facial hair. They hung out for a few minutes, maybe a little longer than they should have, looking around, asking us questions like how long we'd been out here, how long were we staying, and they were, what looked like, kind of sizing us up. They then abruptly said goodbye and walked away. I didn't necessarily feel threatened by them, and I know for sure my brother didn't, but I still felt uneasy about the whole thing. Fast forward 3 or 4 hours, my brother and I had gone to sleep in our tent. I was startled awake by the sound of multiple dogs barking. I've always been a heavy sleeper, and they sounded like they were only about 100 yards out. My heart immediately started pounding, and I kicked my brother through my sleeping bag, asking if he was awake and if he had heard the dogs. He responded, "I'm awake. They've been getting closer for the past half hour or so. Just lay still and don't make any sounds." Needless to say, 12-year-old me was about to shit my pants. We would hear sporadic shouts from several different sources, but they never came any closer. A few minutes later, my brother whispered, "They're just hunting for hogs. They use the dogs to pin them down, and then they shoot." This gave me some relief, but not much. Somehow I managed to fall back asleep, thinking they would pass by. My brother later told me the fact that they were doing this at night was an enormous red flag. I think he was just trying to keep me calm at the time. Fast forward another probably 3 hours, around 2 a.m. I had managed to sleep pretty well after first hearing the hog hunters. I woke up, this time to my brother squeezing my shoulder firmly. "Wake up. Put your shoes on quick. Follow me. Be as quiet as you can." My heart immediately went back to racing. I could hear the dogs in the distance, and the voices again. They were farther away than before, but still distinct. Not asking any questions, I did what he said, and as soon as we were out of the tent, he told me to get on his back. This was a breeze for him after rucking with God knows how much weight in the army. We snuck about 50 yards into the woods, towards the junction of the path and the stream, and crawled into some bushes. It was up a hill, and we had a pretty good elevated view of our campsite. I remember as we were laying there how loudly I was breathing, and how quiet he was when I heard the very distinct sound of a pistol slide racking. I looked over, and my brother had his pistol, an HK USP, that he would give to me a few years later. He was intently watching the campsite and surrounding area. I started to whisper when he put his hand over my mouth and pointed toward the campsite. The group of hunters had steadily been approaching our camp, and by this time, 30 or so minutes after leaving our tent, they had reached it. There were 5 of them, along with 3 or 4 dogs. They all looked relatively young, but 2 either had rifles or shotguns, and the dogs were going nuts, obviously having smelled our scent. For those of you who are backpackers or campers, nobody who comes up on a random camp in the middle of the night with dogs and guns has good intention. I knew this, and my brother knew this. I was scared shitless. I couldn't make out what they were saying, but my brother later told me that they were talking about us. He hadn't heard any specifics either. They lingered for about 20 minutes, shining their flashlights around and talking to themselves, when my brother puts his mouth to my ear and said, "If they come towards, I want you to turn and run as quickly as you can. Don't stop. Don't look back. Stay off the trail and look for the flashing lights." I didn't know what he meant by that, but I'd find out later. I knew I could make it back because he had taught me how to navigate the land pretty well. He handed me a flashlight and told me not to take the red filter off. He told me later that the red filter helps preserve night vision and cuts down on ambient light so it would be harder for someone to see from a distance. At this point, I was so scared I almost started crying, but at the same time had a rush of adrenaline, and what I think was confidence that he thought I could handle myself. We laid there for a while longer, when out of nowhere they started screaming and firing into the woods at random. My brother dragged me back behind the crest of the hill and threw himself on top of me. Thankfully, our position on the top of the hill where we were protected us from any gunfire. They shot maybe 5 or 6 more times and then started walking back the direction they'd come. They'd gotten maybe 100 yards away when I heard a blaring siren and saw emergency lights flashing through the woods. Turns out, while I was asleep, my brother had called the Forest Service office on a satellite phone that he brought along. They had sent out Forest Service officers and game wardens to our area of the wilderness. The Sipsey Wilderness is about 25,000 acres in size, so it took them a while to get there on the dirt roads. When we saw the game warden truck, my brother signaled them with the light and pointed them in the direction the hunters had gone, and the guy sped off, shining a spotlight through the woods. As soon as they were all gone, we went back to our camp, packed up our shit, and waited by the path for the game warden to come back. He gave us a ride in his truck bed back to the main staging area. On the drive back, my brother told me how brave I had been, and that we would talk about it with our parents the next day if I wanted to. I asked him not to do that, since I thought they might never let me camp again. We never got any definite information on what happened to the rednecks we encountered. There are only so many paths that could support a truck or an ATV. Any thorough search effort would have also have to have been done on foot. I have many friends who have gone out to the Sipsey area and have had a great time without any creepy stuff going on. It is truly a wilderness area, and law enforcement response, if you can even reach them, would be slow. I was lucky that my brother was there and reacted so quickly. We also got lucky that whatever their intentions were, the good old boys either reconsidered or lost interest. Who knows what could have happened?
So the good old boys don't sound that good after all.
Quite the opposite. Yeah, they are not so good.
I wonder, is this something that frequently happens on camping trips?
I would say no. All of the camping trips I've been on, this never happened. Like he mentioned at the end of the story, a lot of people go to the Sipsey Wilderness and nothing like this occurs. This is not a common thing to go on.
Thankfully, he served in he was in the army.
He was in the army, yeah. Thanks, user CMVR2256, your brother,
Thank him for his
for his
service,
saving your ass.
and helping you share this really awesome,
Yeah.
or helping you gain this super awesome story.
Yeah, super big thanks for writing this. It's a really, really well written and very interesting account. It's
Scary
everybody's
account.
worst fear when you're camping in the woods. But not everybody gets a fucking Green Beret to bring along.
So which one of the stories tonight scared you the most?
Scared me the most?
The most.
I think the San Francisco Santeria killing.
Really?
Yeah. Really, really... That kind of stuff freaks me out. Just because the religions like that, they need to kill because that's just what they do. There's really no rhyme or reason behind it.
It's a religious practice.
Exactly.
That's fair.
And that's a story that confirms that shit occurs and exists. It's
not just on NCIS.
Yeah, you can't ignore it and say it doesn't happen. It does. It has.
Oof.
How about you? What creeped you out the most?
I want to say it's a toss-up between The Boy in the Wall and The Good Old Boys.
Oh man, The Boy in the Wall, that was really good. The Good Old Boys is really scary too.
I've never truly been camping. I've gone camping in people's yards, but that's about it. But there's something about somebody living and invading your house that really freaks me out. I don't know if I'd own a crawl space. I think I'm going to fill my future home's crawl space up with cement.
I don't know if you can do that. Crawl spaces are there for a reason.
Whatever. I'll learn.
Yeah, I guess the moral of all of these stories...
Be
watch
careful.
out. Be aware of your surroundings.
So as you know, this is our last episode for the Halloween Spooktacular. Thank you so much for letting us celebrate with you. That also means today we are announcing our final winner in our Halloween grab bag giveaway, and this is the cool prize. I mean, they were all pretty cool.
This is the big one.
Yeah. So, congratulations to Jennifer from the Detroit area. Jennifer, you have a trilogy set of the
Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark.
classic.
Written by, I believe, Alvin Schwartz and illustrated by, I forget the guy's
Someone who is
name.
very terrifying and has a very dark and twisted soul because these illustrations are nuts.
Stephen Gamble is the cover artist.
Schwartz and Gamble. I think this series also includes all the original artwork for all 3 books. So,
Yeah.
congrats again, Jennifer. Thank you for supporting the show. Speaking of supporting the show, if you want to hear your story broadcast on the podcast, if you want to come on and be a guest storyteller, feel free to drop us a line at our website, www.atthefire.com, on the Share Your Story page. You can also find us on Facebook and Twitter.
Go ahead and rate and review us on iTunes. Let us know what you think. If you're listening to this right now, 5 stars all the way.
Or, be honest and let us
Well,
know
if
what
you made it to the end, I feel like you probably enjoyed it.
I hope so. We enjoyed it. We're having fun.
We do hope so. As always, tell your friends. You can email us at admin@atthefire.com if you ever want to let us know anything.
Have a safe and happy Halloween.
Yeah, enjoy it out there.
Don't drink and drive.
Never. Don't drink.
But enjoy plenty of hot toddies.
Yeah.
Spiked cider all the way.
Yeah, y'all know where you can find me. I'll be inside with the lights off, ignoring every knock at the door.
You're such a Halloween Grinch.
Halloween is more for me.
You are a grumpy old man. Well, whatever you guys are doing to celebrate the holiday, thanks for celebrating it with us. Friendly reminder, we are going to be going back to 2 episodes a month. That's 1 episode of terrifying tales and nightmare fuel every 2 weeks. So be on the lookout for that on your favorite podcast streaming application.
Be on the lookout for any people sneaking into your walls.
Or any good old boys, because they don't sound that good.
Yeah. With that, sleep tight tonight. Thanks again for joining us.
Goodbye.